I started a long time ago, as you know. And when I started, I'll give you kind of the background as to what caused me to just say this is what I wanted to do, and then what happened that caused me to know that this was going to be my life's work. Because I think sometimes that's the most exciting thing to me, is when people realize that this can be your life's work. Because sometimes from the outside looking in, people assume that Mary Kay is something where it's just a part-time, just kind of goof around with it a little bit, a little extra income here, a little extra income there. And all of you guys know better because you've been exposed to it, but I think there's always room for elevating your understanding of what's really available for you and the potential that there is with this. And then all the things that happened for me that caused me to learn a whole different way of thinking. Because I have learned that successful people do think differently. And people who are entrepreneurs think differently than people who are employees think, so to speak. And I think I benefited a little bit from that because my dad owned his own business. And so I grew up in an entrepreneurial environment with a father who had goals that he put them on the refrigerator and how many houses he was going to sell for the week. And so I kind of had that thought process of creating something that was yours, that you could own, that you could build on, that it wasn't just working, and I don't mean just badly, working for someone else, but there's a different concept as to something you can create yourself, build yourself, and that it can just grow and get better. And you can absolutely create a legacy. So I love that that's Whitney's name for her unit, because that's really the impact of this, is that you can create something of lasting value. And the value in Mary Kay is other people's lives. That's the value, is what you do to impact other people, other women, and help them with their businesses, help them with their lives. But also that when you impact women, you impact families. It affects everyone. So when I started it, I was teaching school. Brian was in college. He was in pre-med at the time. And his goal actually was to be a veterinarian. That's what he wanted to do, because when he was in the Air Force, that's what he did. He worked in veterinarian services. So that's what his goal was. That was his plan. We got married. He had a specific, he was all out there, like, this is what I'm doing and this is how it's going to work. And so it was like, yay, I married someone who's going to be a doctor. That's so fun. All these dreams I have and the way I want to live. I knew I wasn't going to get teaching school because I knew the limitation of the income. But that wasn't where I wanted to start. I wanted to be a principal. I had my goals of where I wanted to, but I was very excited that I had somebody else who had these big goals too, and I think that was part of our attraction, was that we were future focused. So we were living on my teaching income. He was in pre-med, and we had lots of debt. So I came into the marriage with debt. He came into the marriage with debt. So we did not have enough money on a monthly basis to make ends meet. We were living in that 2-bedroom apartment with the gross yellow carpeting. We were driving that one car that had the hole in the floorboard. We were just, the not having money is very stressful. Not having enough money is even more stressful. Meaning not having money is stressful, but when you have more bills than you have money coming in, that just creates whole other area of stress. So it wasn't that I was not a happy person, because I've always been a happy person, but I knew that I was not intended to live like that. Like, this is not how I'm supposed to live. I'm supposed to make more money, have more things, have a better lifestyle, make a different contribution to the world, and it's supposed to look different than this. And I think that's what I've discovered about the women that I've known in Mary Kay that are extremely successful, is that they've understood that your circumstances do not define your life. That no matter what your circumstances are, no matter what about your life that you're not satisfied with at this point, you can change it. And you have the ability to change it. I just think that sometimes people in life don't always know that they can change it. Sometimes they just think that's what they've been given and that's all they have available to them. So when Mary Kay came into my life, I looked at it as an answer for what I wanted in order to change my life. But I looked at it as the answer, as the open door. I thought something is going to happen that's going to change. I just didn't know what it was. I was reading a book by Jim Rohn one time, and he talked about the fact that the most successful people in the world are those who are industrious. So I'm going to have you write that word down. And what he meant by industrious is that being an industrious person means that you can create something. You can put your mind to something, your effort to something, and you can cause something to happen that's greater than what's currently happening in your life. You can make it better. And he says being industrious, it's necessary to have a creative outlook, meaning you can see the invisible before it's visible. You can see how you want your life to look before it looks that way. How you want it to be before it is that way. And then he said the second component to being industrious is having courage to live it. You can see how it can be, but you have to have the courage to be able to go after it. So when this came to me, and when the woman who did the marketing plan with me said that she talked about the philosophy of the company, and she said that Mary Kay did not believe in constructive criticism. And you know, I always say that that was the statement that caused me to say, this is it, I want to try it. She went through the marketing plan and she went through the numbers, but when she said that Mary Kay Ash did not believe in constructive criticism, that she believed in seeing the best in people and helping them see the best in themselves, then that was what caused me to go, this is what I want. Because that's what I did with children, was I loved to create that atmosphere when I taught school of positive reinforcement and seeing the best in them. And because oftentimes children come to school and they only are operating in what their parents believe about them, what their friends believe about them, and so their identity of who they are sometimes is very limited. And I knew that if they had a great teacher in their life at some point that believed in them to be someone different than they saw themselves being, that teacher could ultimately change their perspective of their life. And I had a third grade teacher who was magnificent. I think she was the person who inspired me the most on that. So that was my whole dream about teaching school, was changing those children's lives. Then I got involved in Mary Kay, and I thought, this is like magnified 100 times beyond. The benefit of doing that for a child is now I can have an opportunity to do that for a woman, and then she will do that for her children. Because if you change a woman's perspective, you shift her whole outlook on her life, which shifts her whole ability to be a great mom and a great wife and a great sister and a great person. So as soon as I started this and I got an idea what that philosophy was about, that's why I knew this is it. This is it. So here's the greatest benefit of knowing this is it. When you know this is it, as early as I did, the option, quitting was never an option in my mind. Because this was it. It wasn't that I needed to know how I was going to do this, or how it was going to roll out, or when I could be a director, or how could I be a national sales director. I think the how questions are what trip us up. We want to know, but how does that happen? And how do you do that? And is this going to roll out this way? I need to know exactly how that's going to work. I think I didn't ask a lot of how, because once I knew this was it, I was going to figure out the how. And I was going to figure it out as I went along. I don't think I needed to know all the hows right off the bat. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I went into it with, if this is really it, then it's going to be successful as long as I don't quit. And the only way it's not going to be successful, it doesn't mean that everything's going to go my way, and it doesn't mean all the appointments are going to work out the right way, and it doesn't mean that every appointment I book is going to be great, but what it does mean is that I'm not going to let off, and if I'm not going to let off, then I'm going to sharpen, I'm going to get better, and as I get better, then it's going to become more successful as I go on. And I also knew that what I needed to do was put myself in a position where I was getting really good input, and the really good input was my success meetings. That was my really good input. So if I would make sure that I went to my success meetings every single week and I was around those other women who were doing it, then that was going to be my proof, and it was going to feed me. Because when you're out in the world and you're around lots of other people who doubt success, not maybe even you, but they doubt success. They don't believe that everybody was intended to be successful, that everybody can make a lot of money. And this is what I learned. Everybody can make a lot of money. They just need the right opportunity. And then they need to have the right commitment to the opportunity to make it happen. Because I have watched every type of woman on the face of this earth be successful in this company. I've watched every background, every age. I've watched women who've had wonderful upbringings, and I've watched women who've had tragic, very dysfunctional upbringings be phenomenally successful with this business. I've watched all cultures since I traveled with the company internationally. Every single market I've ever gone into, I realized that no matter what their background is or their culture that's different than us in the United States, they have been highly successful with this opportunity. So it's not that everybody's supposed to be a certain way or act a certain way or have a certain kind of education. It has to do with coming into it based on where you're at in your life and what you want to do to move forward from that point. So, so when you're out in the world and you hear all the people that doubt you, like, I'm going to rent the Cadillac. And they'll go, yeah, right. Or when they say things like, here comes the lipstick lady, and you want to go, I am so much more than a lipstick lady, you just don't get it. Or when they question, or no matter whatever that is. Am I being too loud? No. You have to have that plug-in around the other people who believe it. Like the other people that when you walk into that meeting, they're achieving and they're doing it and they're holding classes. Or if you had a week where things canceled or postponed and you're starting to doubt yourself or doubt the business, then you walk back into the success meeting and they're holding parties and they're selling lots and they've had new recruits. So if they can, then I can do it too. It's knowing that it's always going to work from that point. So I knew that if I went every single week and I plugged into that, and then I also knew that if I went to big things that are available to me. But I don't know if I just knew that innately or I've come to understand that when God's working in your heart, He can do it so much more profoundly when you're away from home. And it doesn't necessarily have to be away from your city, but sometimes when you get into a different surrounding, completely away from what you know to be familiar, and He presents you with a new idea or a new dream is stirred in your heart or a new possibility, it's sometimes when we're at home, in our home all the time, and we're surrounded by what's not our future, we shut ourselves off sometimes to the possibility thinking and the excitement thinking and the bigger concept possibility thinking. And when we're around that and we watch all these people doing all these great things, it's kind of like the lid and the barrier comes off of our mindset. So the weekly things made an impact. The big things made a huge impact too on me. It gave me a bigger picture of what was possible. So I started out doing my 3 parties every Sunday. And that was actually very smart, except I didn't do it because it was smart, and I didn't know it was going to be smart. But once I started doing it, I was like, this works really well. So it's not that I really did everything the right way. I think I just had the right attitude, and when you have the right attitude, things just kind of evolve. So I did 3 parties only because I was going to do 1 party every Sunday, and I figured out I had time to do 2. And then when I had time to do 2, I figured I had time to do 3. So if I was going to do 3, then I could book parties from that Sunday to the next Sunday. And I didn't ever book them out a week, more than a week in advance. I had parties 3 on a Sunday, and those were the only thing I had booked, those 3 parties. And I coached them like crazy. And I made sure that the women that were there knew the benefits that were involved in being there, and I did it in a very non-threatening way, and I'll kind of go through that with you guys so you know how I did it. But I booked those, and my goal, so I had a goal. When I went into that party, I had an intention. My intention was that half of them were going to buy the skincare, and I could have had the goal for all of them buy the skincare. That would probably be smarter, but my goal was half. My goal was half. And I have to tell you, just so you know, because we always talk about the differences of different generations and times in our lives, but 30 years ago, women didn't use skincare. I mean, they didn't use skincare. They used Noxzema, or they used soap on their face, but that was it, and Pond's. They used Pond's cold cream. So when you came to their home and you went through this 5 steps, it was 5 steps to more beautiful skin, they would look at their skin and just be amazed at how great it looked, but they would think 5 steps. I'd use soap and water, and then I'd leave. They put makeup, they wore makeup, but they wore makeup on the top of not great skin. And So when people would say that makeup looked heavy and not natural, and because back then they put makeup on top of bad skin to cover up bad skin, and it always looked heavy and thick and chalky and yucky. So you take them through those 5 steps and their skin will look gorgeous, but all they could think of was, I have to do, I mean, you had to sell them on it. You totally had to sell them on it. Now you don't have to sell them on skincare. Everybody uses skincare in some form, shape, something. All you have to do is allow them to try it, and then they can feel how great their skin is. So 2 hours is how long it took our skincare classes. Literally 2 hours. Literally 2 hours. And you had to sell them on every step as they put it on their face as to why they needed it, why they wanted it, why it was good, why it was important. And then the other thing we sold them on was the second facial. Everybody had to have a second facial. Everyone had to have a second facial, which was the truth, because we had 3 different formulations, and not everybody could use our Formula 1 because it was for very, very dry skin. And chances are they might start using a product that was not necessarily right for their skin. So you had to do a second facial to make sure they were using the right formulas. So we mentioned second facial, second facial, second facial. We had the big flip charts that were like big notebooks, and I had a little gold star on every other page, and every other page I would say, that reminded me to say, and at your second facial, and at your second facial, and at your second facial. So when we sit down to do their individual consultations, I would say, Kendra, first thing we need to do is book your second facial. So what's best for you? And then we would just book the second facial. So my goal was 3 skincare sets sold, and my next 3 parties booked for the next Sunday from my first one. So when I walked out of my 2 o'clock party on Sunday, I had my next 3 already booked for the next Sunday from that very first one. And then I had my skincare, so I turned those into parties, and then my second one, so I 1 at 2, 1 at 5, 1 at 8 every Sunday. My 5 o'clock party, I said, I only do parties on Sundays, my next Sunday is already booked, so what I need for you to do is come with me to be my model on Monday night so we can do your second facial. So every single person needed to come with me to be a model for Monday night to do their second facial. And then my 8 o'clock party, same thing. Now, if for any reason one of my parties rescheduled or postponed for the next Sunday, then I had all those women who were coming as my models that I could call and say, good news. I had my 5 o'clock party just rescheduled and postponed, so you can have a party if you want to get some free stuff. So I'll tell you what I said to them. So sit down. We need to schedule your second facial. So Kendra, you have a choice right now, lucky you, for 3 different options. You could do 5 o'clock for next Sunday, or you could do 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock, or 8 o'clock for next Sunday. That would be you and me are free, or you could just do you and me for your second facial. So which would you rather do?
Let's do you, me, and free.
Awesome. Okay, so what would be best for you? 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock, or 8 o'clock for next Sunday?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock? Okay, got you down. 5 o'clock. Okay, so I need to know, I just have one more question for you.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Can I ask it now?
Yes.
Thank you. If you get their permission, they're paying very close attention. If you just start asking questions, people start to kind of close down. So, can I? Yes. Right now? Uh-huh. You don't have to say it just like that, but that's usually how we get it. So here's the deal. Of those 3 collections that I just showed you at the table, I showed you the basic skincare, and then the basic glamour, and then the complete collection. Of the 3 of those collections, if money had nothing to do with it, which one of them would you choose?
I would want to not if the money were not object.
The money were not an object. You take the complete collection.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I want you to tell me why.